Welcome to the future of payroll and workforce management insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I am your host, Brent Skinner. But enough about me. This is all about my guest today. Welcome, Patrick O'Neill.
Thanks for having me, Brent. Great to be here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And we won't bother our audience with all the comedy of errors that led to us rescheduling this several times. We had weather. We had I think the Patriots had something to do with it, and the NFL and all that. But in any event, so glad that we are finally able to kind of get on the screen here and have this conversation. Now you helped to lead global payroll partnerships at TransferMate. And we have a really interesting topic today. The title of it is When Instant, quote unquote, Isn't Actually Instant, Modernizing Global Pay Without Losing the Plot. Really looking forward to getting into this with you. But as I like to ask all my guests, what got you into this line of work? What's your passion in this space? There's a lot of strong opinions in this space when it comes to payroll, payments, and even HR and HCM and all that kind of stuff. What got you into this? What gets you going every day?
Okay, where do I start with how I got into where I am now? I suppose we could have a podcast on that alone, but look, a real brief history about myself. I suppose by trade, I would be a civil engineer. That's what I would have studied and done my degree in. Never ended up working in that line of work due to the global recession. The construction industry in Ireland was badly affected at the time. So I went off, and I come from an agricultural background as well. So I worked in the agricultural industry for a period of time. And then I managed to find my way into politics in Ireland. So I was a politician for 10 years, of which I gave up about 2 years ago now. And but I started working for TransferMate 8 years ago in sales, as I felt I knew a lot of people working in the company. I was looking for something new, something different, trying to find maybe where my future was going to be. I wasn't sure if TransferMate was going to be that at the time, but I'm there now 8.5 years. Started off just in general sales, and I've worked my way through the company to where now I head up the global payroll partnerships team in TransferMate. So I've been in the payroll side of the business for the last 3.5 years, and I suppose you could say I've been leading it specifically for the last 3 or 4 months directly.
Wow, that's quite the career arc. I love that. That's really interesting. That's
Where do I go
awesome.
next, Brent?
Yeah, right. I don't know. I mean, probably.
How do you end up working in payroll? It's always a question that not obviously I don't work in direct payroll, as in the salary calculations and tax calculations directly, but everywhere I go at payroll events, that's the first question nearly every host asks is, how do you get into payroll? And everyone has a very unique and different story, and none normally ended up wanting to be in payroll, but just somehow ended up there.
Oh yeah, and it's a theme that comes up a lot on the podcast. I had a guest a few months ago, and she had a great saying. She said, you don't choose payroll; payroll chooses you.
Yeah,
you know, and
pretty
and
accurate.
I just thought of a headline, all career paths lead to payroll, although that's a little bit hyperbolic. But anyway, I mean, yeah, it's really, really, really interesting to see how that all kind of unfolds for people. And we could talk about that too a lot. Let's get into our topic for today, though, however, right? There's a lot of talk around around modern pay and cross-border payments and there's a lot of sort of marketing speak out there about how they're seamless, they're instant, and all this kind of stuff. And they're certainly better. It's certainly easier to do it today than it was, 10, 20 years ago. I mean, it's definitely different today. But they're not really as seamless. There's a lot of buzzwords out there, and they don't necessarily really describe the situation. And we're going to talk about this a little bit. So my first question to you is is pretty straightforward, I think. How instant do global payments really need to be? Like, how instant do they need to be? And at what point do speed gains compromise payroll accuracy and control? Like, what's the sweet spot here?
Yeah, look, it really varies per industry as to specific requirements around payment rails. So, instant payment rails have becoming more widespread across the globe over the last 5 to 10 years, you could say, particularly the last maybe 2 years. It's been really a topical payment rail. A lot of companies and organizations have been looking to tap into, and even your own, if you look at your own maybe domestic banking or your own banking apps, you can see how quickly you can now move money from one point to the other. And it's fantastic, and it's a really great service. And it's really been dipping into the payroll world for the last 12, 18, maybe 2 years. As you know, I'd be prospecting new clients and talking to all sorts of people across the industry. And the question has come up a lot as regards, speed of payment. How quick can you make these payments? And can you do instant payments? And like, we can, as a payments company, we can do instant payments in a lot of jurisdictions. But with that comes certain caveats and certain risks. And, a lot of those things don't fit necessarily well with payroll related payments, whether it be salary or tax related payments to statutory authorities. So while on the outside, the word instant looks fantastic, and it is they're really good payment rails when it comes to making payments. But I think sometimes people in the payroll world may need to take a step back and look at it from a functional perspective and say, well, we're maybe giving up some accuracy here or some referencing or something that may lead to our employees having some issues with receiving their salaries accurately, efficiently, and on time every month.
Yeah, yeah, and that I have a question for you, just for some in our audience. I'm familiar with the terminology quite a bit, but let's say for the uninitiated, let's say we have folks listening in, watching who aren't necessarily in payroll. They're payroll curious, right? And what's a payment rail? Like, I'm watching this. What does a
Okay, so
payment rail mean?
yeah, yeah. So basically, it's a method of sending money from one bank to another or receiving money from one bank to the other. So your typical rails will be, and there's different terminologies across jurisdictions, but we'll try and keep it US focused, as I'm sure a lot of your audience is going to be in that part of the world. So we can receive money via reverse wire or domestic wire, standard wire payments. We can also receive money via an ACH. So they're all payment rails. So instant is just another form of those. So we would receive money via wire, reverse wire, ACH, or instant, and we will send out via those similar rails. So we will actually process our payments outwards via wire, ACH, or instant. So with the TransferMate platform, the customer has the choice of selecting which rail they want to use to receive their money or send their money. So it gives them all that added flexibility. Each come with different time frames and timelines, and there's certain different costs per jurisdiction as well. In some countries, like international wire would be your most expensive cost, as it's a currency that's leaving, let's say, the US to go. So if you're trying to send US dollar outside of the US, it's classified as an international wire in a lot of cases. So it's going to be charged quite a hefty fee by a lot of banks. So yeah, so normally the ACH rails will be your cheapest option for sending money.
That makes sense. You're right, and they're called rails because just like a train rail, right? Like a
I'm
railroad.
assuming so. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
think so.
like, if you choose that rail, there's one way it happens every single
Yeah.
time. Okay. Yeah, that's
You don't diverge off that rail once you've selected that option and you've funded that transfer. It's only going one way.
yeah. Yeah, that's right. One way too, right? There's one way to do it, and it's one way. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. Um, what kind of questions should employers add to their payroll RFPs? Like, to better vet providers, like their payment rails, partners, error rates. Like, what should people be thinking about when they're putting the RFPs together, when they're thinking about these global payments and how they want to do them and to get them right?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and something I've been trying to maybe use from a thought, giving people food for thought when maybe they're. So look, we're always the last part of the chain here in the payroll world. So we're the payment we initiate the remittances to the employees, and in some cases the statutory authorities. So we're always the last piece of the puzzle, and in often cases we're the ones that are partnering with the payroll aggregator, that certain companies will be deciding which of the global payroll companies are going to go with for their payroll services for the next, 2, 3, 4, 5 years in some cases. So these decisions are quite large and they're not taken lightly. And all those payroll aggregators and payroll companies would have a payments company in some way, shape, or form in the background moving money on their behalf. In some cases, it could be just a standard bank. That's quite common. And in other cases, there's companies similar to TransferMate that have plugged their API into this payroll aggregator software. So when a client logs in, uploads their monthly pay run, it is actually TransferMate that is actually moving the money to the employees on their behalf, and they may not even realize this. So what I like to ask people to think about when they're going through this process is to ask the question of these payroll companies as regards who do you use for your payments? Where are they based? Where are they licensed in particular? That's quite key for payroll, because in a lot of scenarios you have to be able to pay via local bank account. So by being licensed in country, it allows you to open local bank accounts and be compliant with local payroll laws. They're just very basic questions. You can get in, it's worthwhile getting into the detail because payroll requires accuracy at the end of the day. So, what is your monthly success rate for payments? Is it below a certain percentage? If it is below a certain percentage of even 99%, 98% maybe, you'd be slightly concerned, because at the end of the day, it's the customer that's going to be dealing with employees who are complaining that their salaries haven't been received on time. So payroll from a payments perspective is treated in our company as VIP. So we would have a specific team, a back office team there, who will support our payroll customers and their underlying clients when it comes to gathering data, making sure everything is accurate, testing beneficiaries before we go live with a full monthly salary into these accounts. So because we don't want errors, we don't want issues when it comes to someone's salary at the end of the day. So accuracy of, licensing, monthly accuracy of payment within these companies, common issues that they see from their payment provider, what comes up as maybe being, they can be quite common, and some can be a period of time. Certain banks might change. At the end of the day, payments can be held for varying reasons, and it'll be completely out of the employer's control and the payments company's control. And that's down to the local bank. Just something has changed, or there's been a random compliance check, and it's outside of everyone's control. But how you action and how you deal with those processes is something that should be asked as well. Like, what is your escalation process? If there is a payment held for a compliance screening, how do you resolve this? What is the process? How can we get the information to you as quickly as possible in order to satisfy the bank's needs to release the funds to the employee? They're just a few straightforward ones, and there's plenty of other things that probably should be asked. Because at the end of the day, while we're a small piece of the puzzle maybe on the outset, we're actually a huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to the actual final execution. And while there's hundreds of global payment companies out there, there's only a handful that really specialize in payroll, to be fair, and have done it as a legacy business and have done it for over 10 years, and we will be one of those. And we can sit back on our history and our record and say that we feel we're quite good at it and can offer quite good advice to anybody who's maybe looking to talk to someone in this space, or to look at payroll companies, and we can give some honest opinions.
Really good advice, and really important things to think about. And I want to get to our last question, but I actually have, you made me think of something else, and maybe we could just sit on this for just a moment. Are most companies equipped? Do they have the internal knowledge? Are they well enough equipped to know what to ask in an RFP? Like, they watch they watch a podcast like this and say, oh, this is what I should do. Like, should a company even go into this on its own, or is it good? What maybe reach out to some experts? Like, what should a company do?
Oh, yeah, well, I think there's no harm in someone reaching out to a payments company like us from the outset and asking certain questions that they should include in their RFP to a payroll company as regards from a payment side of things. What are the things to look out for here when it comes to, because on the outset, you're going to be looking at all the payroll stuff, the real kind of bread and butter payroll stuff. That's going to be your focus. But what can be forgotten is that final leg of payment, and that's when all the pain really starts and happens. If something goes wrong with that, that's when your phone's going to be ringing and you're going to have angry employees, and even worse, if you have a tax authority that hasn't been paid on time and you're open to statutory fines or state fines or something for a late payment, that's not something that anybody wants to go through. So all these questions are quite important, I think, to ask your payroll company as who they use behind the scenes. Now, some don't do this as an offering. They will just give you your bank files and you will upload it via your own bank. But a lot of them will have their own in-house payment system built in. So there's a bit of a mix out there within the industry. So I think in general, like most large payroll companies would have some form of embedded payments built into their platform at this stage. But there is, and some would do a mix. Some will offer their clients an all-in-one service where they will have the option of going from all the way through to payment within their platform, or they can also receive back their bank files and go to their own bank themselves and upload their files if that's their preference. So both options are there for companies to do across a lot of larger companies in particular. But I think there is definitely a shift towards an all-in-one service for both, your payroll aggregation, your salary dispersion, and also then your global tax and statutory payment dispersion as well. That's a whole topic you could get into on its own in reality. And I think I can see a shift in the US in particular over the last 12 to 2 years as well, with a lot more companies in the US looking at global employees more so as full-time employees, more so than just contractors or maybe employed through an employer of record. I think there's definitely a shift in the market in the US in that space as well.
Yeah, yeah. Really, really good insight there. And we have a few minutes left, and I want to just make sure we get to this because there's a bigger picture, right? We have these newfangled things like earned wage access. It's been around for a little while, but it's still new, right? We have obviously AI. We're not going to get through a podcast without talking about AI. We have rising expectations for real-time pay. You know, real-time pay is really kind of interesting, almost like an IV drip, although I don't know if that's necessarily ever going to happen just because of demand, people, but anyway, I'm kind of getting on down a rabbit hole here. I love talking about this stuff, but how does all of this stuff like reshape the strategic role and leadership profile of payroll? Like, how does it affect payroll from that standpoint?
Well, I think it caused a lot of headaches for companies when it comes to funding their payroll and how they, in most companies, well, across Europe in particular, I'd say nearly every, the vast majority of people are paid a monthly salary. And I think in the US, maybe it is probably, there's a bit more in the US that are paid maybe weekly or bi-weekly compared to Europe. But earned wage access has become a real disruptor in the market in the last couple of years, and there is there's people, it is an employee dictated world these days. The employee has a lot of say in companies and how they're treated and how they like to be paid, and there is a move towards being able to access their money before the end of the month or before the end of the week. And there is two ways of looking at this. If there's an emergency, great, fantastic if someone can access some of their money for something that has come out of the blue and they don't want to have to go and ask somebody else for money, or if it's something serious, maybe there's some form of loan needed, and we don't want you don't want them going to some shady dealing of a loan shark or something like that in an emergency situation. But there's the other side then of people could have addictions to gambling or anything like this, and allowing them to access funds before time, can cause their life to unravel in other ways. So like it's there's ethical questions around it as regard the company themselves and offering this to your employees. Is it something you want to take on? How you fund this, and how you stay on top of, reconciling everyone's monthly pay packet at the end of the month. There's so many systems that will have you inbuilt into your platform to even allow you to do this. Now, it is a really good product, and there's really, really good companies out there who do it. But there has to be an element of responsibility with it as well. And if you take your eye off the ball with it, you can, it can cause certain issues that nobody really wants to get into either. But it's a really interesting product. It is definitely there for the future, I would say. And I think more companies are probably going to have to look at it and embrace it into the future, maybe against their own will to do so. But I think it's going to be hard to avoid for companies with certain certain style of employees in particular, but he does paid on weekly basis. I think it's really hot topical in those areas.
I love what you're saying here, and just to put a sort of a fine point on it, or maybe an exclamation point, I think some of this new technology and some of these new capabilities, some of them made possible by relaxing of compliance or an evolution of the regulatory landscape, right, is kind of very sort of almost violently yanking payroll out of its payroll departments out of their safe place, their sort of comfortable place of being that cost center, right? So it's kind of a dual-edged sword. On the one hand, there's you're seen as an operational efficiency play only, right? But at the same time, you can kind of hide there and feel safe, and you do get payroll right every pay period, and then and that's it. So I think this is really kind of forcing payroll departments to think more strategically, more in terms of being leaders in the organization. And this is going to be sort of a longer, sort of messy process, but I think we're going to come out the other side with payroll as just as a discipline being seen as much more strategic and part and parcel of leadership within organizations. And it's just interesting to think about the interplay of that. How much of that is the chicken and the egg? It's just really interesting to me, and that's probably another episode that we could talk about sometime, Patrick.
Yeah, well, look, what you've said there kind of pivots back to point one and question one, and what payroll professionals deal with. Accuracy is key, and the old ACH rails are the most accurate rails you can use when making your monthly payroll salary payments across the globe. You can rely on the money to be pulled at a certain time and to arrive in an account at a certain time on any given day, and that is what payroll at the end of the day is always going to be about: is accuracy and consistency, and you're never really going to change that for a lot of people. And while instant and earned wage access are all new things that have come on the scene, I think a lot of payroll professionals would rather consistency over speed. And I think that's where, while payments industry is definitely moving towards instant as a whole, and easy access to funds, I think payroll is always going to still hold that bit of traditional style of payment flows, because consistency, as I've mentioned already, is key to that whole process, because a lot of people's lives revolve around being paid on a certain day at the same time, so that their mortgages can be paid and whatever else can be paid, and they can get on with living again for that month. And it's a vicious circle. Every month it's rinse and repeat every month.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Someone else on my podcast a while back said that she bleeds payroll, and she has a very because she's been in the space for about 40 years, and it takes it very seriously in terms of getting everybody their correct pay on time accurately, and it's such a big deal, and that in and of itself can become a strategic lever for leadership. Patrick, we could talk about this all day long. It's a podcast, and we go about 20 minutes, and so. Thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Lots of stuff, really important things to think about.
Thanks, Ben. It's been great to finally get here and do it. Since we first met last May, so hopefully we'll see each other in person again in a few months. I think it's in Nashville this year, so
Yes,
we can catch up there again.
absolutely. PayCon in Nashville. I will be there. We'll see you there. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at hr.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.